Well, it didn't take long before what Assistant Minister to the Treasurer, Stephen Jones, brazenly calls the honey of your super savings to become too tempting for Labor to resist dipping in their sticky little paws. He wants to spread it around the hive. That's code for taking your savings and giving it either to those who haven't earned it or funneling it into the black holes that exist in Labor's budget. Labor looked you in the eye and promised you that they would not make changes to your super. They did it before the last election. Remember this?
Does Labor commit to the current super arrangements for self-funded retirees and other superannuants? And do you rule out any increases to super taxes and changes to caps?
We've said we have no intention of making any super changes. One of the things that we're doing in this campaign is we're making all of our policies clear. We're putting them out there for all to see.
Well, this week, Treasurer Jim Chalmers started the process of making a rather large change, removing the incentives that exist for people to save for their retirement through superannuation. Now, already Labor have tried to remove transparency from super funds about how they use your money. The Coalition made it a requirement that super funds be transparent about how they use member savings by disclosing when they use sums of money for political donations or activism, lobbying or advertising. Labor tried to remove that, and the Coalition, perhaps in an unlikely match, teamed up with the Greens and some independents to thwart their efforts. It's been a really big win from opposition. Now, quite frankly, I've always been of the view that it's contrary to do anything as a super trustee that doesn't directly serve the interests of members. The responsibility of a trustee is to act wholly in the interests of the beneficiary, and in this case, that means fund members. That means every dollar a fund spends needs to serve member interests and member interests only. And it's hard to see how propping up ALP election campaigns, kickbacks to unions, bankrolling the New Daily and its propaganda, or sponsoring sports teams makes your nest egg grow. But unsurprisingly, that's not how Labor sees it. Right now, super contributions are generally taxed at around 15%. That means you get an incentive to make a contribution to your retirement now that reflects the difference between what you'd usually pay as your tax rate on that income and the 15%. So let's work this out. If you earn $100,000, you'd pay $22,967 of tax if you were just to put it in your pocket. That's about 23% tax. But if you chose to put some of that into your super, you'd pay the concessional rate of 15%, saving you the difference in tax of 8% as an incentive for you to sacrifice dollars now and save them for later. Those incentives dry up pretty quickly, though, for people on high incomes. But here's the rub. Labor want to remove the tax concessions that incentivise you to save for retirement and then replace it with the coercion of forcing contribution rates up. That means taking the pay rise you've earned now and using their lawmaking power to sweep it off to their mates in the super industry. You might think you need those extra dollars to manage the rising cost of food or power or fuel. You might want to whack it on the mortgage, particularly as rates have gone up. But let me assure you, Labor's supermates have invested hard in getting this government, and they're going to get your pay rise, come hell or high water. They'll just give it another name. They'll call it an increased compulsory superannuation contribution. It hurts much less when you call it that. You won't be surprised to know that real wages went down by 4.5% in the last quarter measured, because any increase from the employer faded by comparison to our soaring inflation rate. But don't take my word for it. Here's the Guardian's graph. There's something deeply wrong about the way Labor are going about this. They're switching from incentives to coercion, from carrots to sticks. Under the Coalition, you had some choice about what you wanted to do with your income. But now Labor are deciding for you, even where that causes you hardship right now. Similarly, as young people struggle to gather the savings to get into their own homes, Labor are, with their plan to legislate a purpose for super that limits it to retirement only, trying to take away the right of people to use their own money to achieve their own vision for what a good life looks like. Most people would think having a home is a darn good thing to have in retirement. But Labor says no. They say the government knows what's best for you. And the best thing for you is for our union mates to take care of that. Thank you very much. So you can kiss goodbye to being able to access your super savings to get into your own home. But don't worry about being homeless because Labor have a plan. Treasurer Chalmers has made it clear that he expects super funds to invest in what he calls nation-building projects like, wait for it, mass investment in social housing. So, young Australians, aspiring as you are, your dream of owning your own patch of this great country will, because Labor won't let you use your own money, be replaced with lifelong rental in cookie-cutter, mass-produced, government-subsidised social housing. Last time I checked, that's not even close to the Australian dream. Social housing has a place, but it should never be our aspiration to drive Australians to it en masse. As the Financial Review put it this week, surely super is not a pool of capital to be turned towards the pet project of the government of the day, as worthy as they might be. It's a pool of capital held on behalf of individual savers who will have individual retirement needs and objectives. I think there's something illuminating about the way that Treasurer Chalmers talks about super. Check this out.
Right now, we're on track to spend more on super concessions, tax concessions, than the age pension by around 2050.
Did you notice it? He described the tax rate you currently pay on super as a cost to the budget. A cost to the budget? The aged pension is a cost to the budget, but to describe it as a cost to the budget, as the failure to tax you more on what is already yours, speaks only of one thing: higher taxes. He's already talking about your money as though it's his. And that tells you everything you need to know about this government's approach to super. When it was established, superannuation seemed like a good thing, but it has now become so corrupted and so ineffective given the large number of people who still need age pensions that one could be forgiven for questioning whether it's meeting its objective. Now, Labor plans to deal with that by entrenching favour for the $3.3 trillion that super funds wield in power for themselves, of course, with your money, taking away your right to choose what to do with your earnings and with it, your life. It's time for a real conversation about whether super should be just one voluntary option among many for Australians to save for their futures in the way that suits their own goals, their own needs and their own dreams. Doing so would also reduce the temptation for governments to put their hands in the honeypot of your retirement savings to prop up their unbalanced budgets. Labor so often couch their high taxing ways in the language of morality. But let's be really clear here. There is nothing moral about taking from those who have worked and earned and giving it to those who did not. There is nothing moral about taking by force from one in our community, even where that recipient engenders our sympathy. The goodness of human community comes when we voluntarily and deliberately help one another as we face genuine need. That's what happens when big governments get out of the way and let people choose what works for them. But that goodwill, that generosity and sincerity is stripped and turned to resentment when governments who purport to know best decide who is worthy and who is not, and affect their will by force. That is not moral. But that, friends, is Labor's socialist dream for you.